right. Well, welcome everybody to the next podcast of Beatles music, and I have with me my good friend James Corbett, and we're going to rip into the song 𝘜𝘱𝘥 from Rubber Soul because we're going album by album and picking one song from each album. And was it you that made the choice for this one, James? I always ask you to make the choice. I think you left it to me in this case.
Yeah, I don't remember. Anyway,
yeah.
I think we're both happy with this choice.
Yeah. So 𝘜𝘱𝘥, wow, okay. It's a beautiful little number. It's very simple. It's very delicate. I kind of think it like a little delicate crystal figurine or something. It's just very, very sweet. So what we're going to do with this song, as the lore goes, Paul, this was one of the Beatles' joke songs, believe it or not. The lore goes that this song had been hanging around for a while, and Paul would do it at parties to make people laugh and sing with a mock French accent. Because, as he said, he felt the chord progression sounded French to him. Interestingly enough, I could get that. I get why he would say that. The delicacy, for one thing, So, in any case, this song was originally written without, you see I have a capo on right now, but it was originally written, the chord progression, without a capo. So, in order to accommodate a good key for his singing voice, he placed the capo up and did the same chord forms. So you get this. So on and so forth. What I'm going to do now, this puts us, if we deal with F minor, it's the relative minor of the key of A flat major, which is a hairball for guitarists. Flat keys and guitars don't go together well unless you're a real nerd. Most guitarists are used to the open strings, so those don't really accommodate flat keys very well. Okay. But what I'm going to do is A flat, in my mind, is a mess. I don't like dealing in the key of A flat. I really don't like the key, and I don't like its relative minor sister, F minor. I never like playing in those keys. So we're going to revert back to Paul's original strategy and bring it down to the open strings. Now, anybody that wants to learn this by watching my fingerings and stuff like that, all you need to do is do the same exact fingering, except put the capo at the 5th fret, and you'll have the same exact thing, okay? So I'm going to lose this right now because
it is a little bit more cramped up there, so be careful.
It's right. As you know from experience, James. All right, so God. Okay, so we're going to try to keep this to a compact 3 hours. All right, and which literally I can go on for 3 hours. I was wondering whether I should. All right, one thing I'll do in the show notes is I will place a link to my music theory lecture on the evolution of the minor scales. All right, that's an important connection for what we're about to do. I'm going to kind of go through it as fast as I can, so it might kind of, if you can't follow, don't worry, you just go back to the video I suggest and you'll get it. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to take an A natural minor scale and I'm going to play it on one string. Okay. Now the point to really be aware of is the last 1, 2, 3, 4 notes. Okay. This is where all the action is going to happen. Now that's the natural minor scale. Okay. That is the C scale, but starting on an A note, right? So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you the harmonic minor. They changed one of the notes, and it's the 7th step they changed. So you see where this was here, this is now here, right? And then finally the melodic minor, this note right here, the 3rd minor type, they changed to this. So you get... Now that's called melodic minor. It will show up in 𝘜𝘱𝘥, but so will the harmonic minor, and so will the natural minor. This is why it's important to kind of go through this. I'm going through it quick. But here's the point. It's hard to make stable harmony happen through the melodic and harmonic minor scales. I won't go into why, but it's hard to get reasonable stable triads. Actually, you're going to see it in a moment. But one thing I always say is you have to, as a composer, you have to blend these three types together. Or you should think about blending the three types together. Now, what I'm doing, when I go from here, I'm going to take all three scales and put the notes together. So I get this. Total chromatic step, half-step movement. And that is the reason why Led Zeppelin got sued. That is all a mix of all three of those scales. That's why we could get this line. Now we're over here in the key of a C minor, so we're going to get this. Okay? So that's a real quick overview of the evolution of the minor scale. So you blend them together, and there's a reason for it. You couldn't create stable chords. And actually, I still have your attention. You're still with me, James, on this?
I am 100% with you, but this is probably the 20th time that I've been through this, so I'm starting to wrap my mind around it.
Oh, good. No, that's great. In fact, when you featured me on your 2017 Truth video, this is exactly what I was talking about.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
It's so important. But once you get it, it's great because you have that flexibility to see what's going on or to compose with more flexibility. So what I'm going to do real quick now is, since we've taken Michelle to the key of C minor. So actually, I don't need the, well, let's avoid the theory for a second. Let's look at the form of the song first. We'll look at the form of the song first. Why don't you play it?
Oh, okay. Yeah. So we are going to be featuring a cover from All You Need Is Lub. Is the name of the channel.
Yeah,
All You Need Is
Lub or something.
Who does a nice little rendition. So let's listen to the intro and the first verse.
All right, there we go. All right. So what we have here, we're in the key of C minor. This is a very interesting thing that he's doing. He's introducing our ears to the C minor feeling. But he takes us to the major C major chord, okay? This is what's known in classical music as the Picardy third, where you expect a minor chord. When you replace that root minor chord with a root major chord, what you get is a kind of the sun begins to shine feeling. Things are so much better than the darker.
And yet, may I interject, although that is the effect of that chord in that moment, in the overall progression, I would still say the song is very wistful. I wouldn't say it becomes triumphant or happy in that moment, per se.
Yeah, absolutely. And the reason why, actually, is because we're actually in C minor all the way through, even with that C major chord. Because that C major chord is almost like, which you can hear the heaviness of the minor chord coming in, except he doesn't do the minor chord. Oh, there's so much to talk about with this one. All right, so you and I had a discussion about this. What we have in the chords are... Yes, that's what we have.
Who here, raise your hands, who here ever consciously thought of that chord be sounding that way? Oh, no.
Right. This is called an F7 sharp 9, and McCartney himself called this chord a great ham-fisted jazz chord, in his own words. And ham-fisted, I will say, because when you're there, and you hear, it's like, what? Like, how did that happen? Excuse me? To me, this breaks a really cardinal rule, but there's virtually no way to escape it. There's no way to escape this chord. And why would I say that? Because the melody... All right. I'm going to show you... give me 1 second here to boot up. All right. So what we see here is F A flat C is F minor. F A C is F major. F A C B flat is F7. Now at the bottom is our chord F A C B flat A flat. Where do you find an A flat in this chart? and the above chords.
F minor.
And the minor.
Yeah.
Right. Where do you find an A note in the above chords?
Major or
in the
seven.
F major,
Yeah.
at major
Dominant
or
seven.
seven.
Yeah.
So we have a combination of major and minor together. All right, this is why this is unavoidable. Now, normally you and I compartmentalize the songs and we'll say we'll talk about lyrics, we'll talk about chord movement, but we're not doing this right now, apparently, because the song itself is so convoluted, you can't talk about one without talking about the other. So right now I'm going to talk about the background harmonies. Do you have...
Yep. You want to listen to them?
The isolated... Yeah, let's...
Okay. Hold on. Okay, and credit where credit's due, that's Ably House Lessons and Isolated Tracks on YouTube.
Thank you. Yes. I'll put a link to both of these guys in the show notes. All right, so what we needed to listen to was that second chord. Now, one thing you should know is, and you probably discovered from this, this is Shades of Abbey Road. This is like 6-part overdubbed harmonies.
Yeah.
There is no way I was going to tease apart all of those notes.
No.
There's no way my ear can do that. I don't know how that guy did it, but God bless him for doing it. I'm not going to do it. All right, so, but the harmonies sound a little like this. Right?
Yeah.
This is an F7.
Yep.
But, so we have, in the harmonies, in the background harmonies, we have established an F7 chord, which has that A note in it, right?
Yep.
But the melody goes... That's an A flat, so... Right?
Yep.
So you can literally hear the isolated track of the guitars. There was one, we can't play it because it's a copyright violation.
Right. Yep.
But this guy did a version of it. He did the, we should have queued that one up. He does the isolated track for the acoustic guitar.
Let's give it a try. You want to try?
Yeah.
Okay.
There it is.
Sticks out. Now, we talked about this. It was one of the first things that you picked up when you started analyzing this, and you're like, did you hear this sharp 9 chord? And I must admit, of course, I never, ever picked up on that consciously. And one of the reasons is because they put it so far back in the mix. The guitar is so far back in the final mix that you can hear it when you're sitting there listening for it, but otherwise it does not jump out at you.
Yes.
And you said, and I agree, I think that's probably George Martin doesn't want to highlight that part, that particular harmony.
If you do a delicate song like this and you add in that pimple of a chord, it sounds like, what are you doing, Jimi Hendrix all of a sudden? Like, what just happened? Right?
Yeah.
We talked about this, and my belief, first of all, George Martin did have a strong hand in this. And one thing I'm really proud of is when I heard the guitar solo, I thought to myself, I bet George Martin wrote the solo. Turns out, according to Wikipedia, George Martin wrote the solo.
Who knew?
So he had a big hand in this. He had a big hand in this. He was hands-on with the guys working the song. Now, I think I told you my theory of why are those acoustic guitars so far back. I think George Martin was kind of along the same lines as me. I think he thought, wow, that chord is just detestable. And he probably used a very diplomatic way to say, oh, your backup vocals are so nice. Why don't we just put the acoustic guitars back a little bit,
So the ultimate effect, I would say, for the average listener who's not straining to hear that sharp 9 in the background, is an F7. And I think that's why. I think I'm used to hearing it in that context, which is why in preparation for today, I was looking at a how do you play this on guitar tutorial thing on YouTube, and the guy goes with the F7, and it sounds so good to me. It's like, yeah, it's just right. But I thought to myself, okay, that's because clearly this is just the guitar front and center, so you don't want to stress that sharp 9. I wonder what Paul does live. So I thought, because maybe when Paul's live and it's the guitar very loud front and center, maybe he's going to change it. Maybe he will just play the F7. So I went to the White House performance where he's performing for Obama, and he hits the sharp 9. It's there. So he doesn't back off on it.
And by the way, too, I remember I had told you, like when I saw this F7 sharp 9 pop up, I remember I told you I heard somebody else mention this F7 sharp 9, and it turned out to be Paul himself talking about Michelle, saying, all he said was, I put a sharp 9 chord in there, and I'm thinking to myself, where the hell in Michelle is a sharp 9 chord? That's what I want to know.
And you were thinking, Paul doesn't know what he's talking about.
Yeah, right. I was thinking, Paul doesn't know his music theory. What does he know? Well, it turns out he put the F7. Now, let's look at the options here. So we have 3 chord types, major, minor, and 7th, right? So if I go, Michelle, my belle, that's F minor. But it works perfectly with the melody because you have that A flat. Michelle, my belle. It could work.
Yeah.
But you miss the cool bluesiness of an F7. But there's that, you hear that note.
But that is the sharp 9. You don't need to put it in the chord. It is because of the melody, right?
Yes, absolutely. And I think that should have been the choice. I really do. I think the choice of that F7 there is remarkably great. Yeah. How do you put a blues sound into this French
I know,
thing,
but it works so beautifully.
It works so beautifully.
But putting the sharp 9 in the chord just seems too much.
It seems too much. I agree. Because it would flow by so fast. It's this little moment of sour, but not enough to really strike you. And I really do believe that's what George Martin's intent was, to let's bring those guitars back, So, yeah. Wow. So, yeah, I knew this was going to be one point we're going to sit on for a minute because it's so weird.
It really does jump out, yeah.
And quite honestly, I'm surprised. I think Paul must have scratched his head over this a few times, like what to do. I don't know if he sat there and went, oh, that sounds good. I can't picture him doing that. He had such a fine aesthetic, He
might have, it could have been he had the melody and he was talking to George Martin about it, and George Martin mentioned that it's the sharp 9, and he's like, well, what does that sound like on the guitar? Could have been something.
Maybe. Well, he learned it, actually, let me see, taught to the Beatles by a guy named Jim Greddy, who worked at Hesse's Music Shop in Whitechapel, Central Liverpool. And funny thing is, Wikipedia read my mind here because George Harrison uses that same chord, but in its proper positioning, not as a 4 chord, which I've always preached over and over again. Do not use a sharp 9 chord as the 4 chord of the key. It's just weird, as we can tell by the effect. But until there was you. And here George goes.
Which I don't know. That is that 5-1?
It's a tritone substitution for 5.
Gotcha.
So it resolves down the half step. Remember I told you?
Yep.
That is the way in this kind of jazzy, loungy context. That's the way it works. Mm-hmm. Not as a 4 chord, but as a substitution for the 5.
Yeah.
So yeah. So there's that chord. So let's see. Now, all right, now I have to go to another screenshot. All right, so what we have here is the natural minor, the harmonic minor, and the melodic minor, and all the chords that belong to them. Now look at the bottom, E flat major. Okay? The chords of E flat major are the same as the chords of C natural minor because C natural minor is a mode of the key of E flat major. So we're just rooting on that C minor now. Now, where do you find a B flat chord?
Natural minor.
And the natural minor, which is the key of E flat major.
Yeah.
And after that, F7 sharp 9, we do indeed get a B flat. This is what I'm talking about when I say that you have to mix all three together. So I'm going to play through the chords and talk this out. So we have C major, which belongs to none of this, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's the 5/7 that would go to F. We have B flat major. We'll look at that in a moment. Then we have. Now I'm going to go to the bridge. So we have C minor, E flat 7. Okay. Now I have to think of the key of E flat major for this because E flat 7 is the 5/7 of 4, which is A flat. It's the chord that goes to the A flat chord in the key of E flat. Right? Now we went back to E flat major.
Sorry. Are you telling me when you take a 1/7, a tonic 7, that is also a secondary dominant for the 4 in that same key? That's
yes, indeed.
I never knew that.
Yeah.
Okay.
One dominant 7 is a secondary dominant chord. Yeah.
But that's the hallmark of the blues. That's one of the blues clues, isn't it?
Yeah, but, it depends on how you use it.
Yeah, all right. Okay. Sorry. Right. I'm just having my own little miniature brain explosions here. Okay. Interesting.
Explode away, man. Have fun.
I'll explode in the corner quietly. Sorry.
Now, one thing I failed to discuss is the 4 triad types. There are 2 stable, 2 unstable. The 2 stable ones are major and minor chords. The 2 unstable ones are diminished and augmented chords. Now, the reason I bring this up is because, let me see. All right, so the E flat 7 that shows up, okay? That wouldn't be E flat 7 according to harmonic and melodic minor. It couldn't be because the harmonic, it's augmented chord that shows up on that step. So again, we're borrowing from the key of E flat major. Now we go to A flat to G7. Now where is there an A flat to G7?
There isn't, is there?
Yeah, there's an A flat major to G7.
Oh, A flat major to right. Harmonic minor.
Right.
Right. Yeah.
So that brings us to a harmonic minor moment.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So all told, we're in the bridge right now. So there's I want you, 5/7 of 4, an E flat major, A flat major, which is true for harmonic and natural.
Right.
It's true for both.
Okay.
But then we get the G. The only place where you get G to A flat in that series is in the harmonic minor. And resolving finally home to C minor where we get our... All right, so there's that. All right, so lots going on there. Now this is, mind you, of course, this is all instinctive. This is not something that Paul said, oh, I'm going to, blend minor key types and, do a 5/7, a 4 and, all that stuff. He just did it instinctively, which is, to me, more remarkable than if somebody had all the theory,
And that's it, right? We've gone through the whole thing. So we don't need to listen to the bridge by itself, do we?
Let me see. That what might be worth listening to is the second isolated vocal of the bridge because it's just so nicely done. And this guy does a great job of it too.
Okay.
Yeah, that was it. Yep. And just really, that to me is Paul going bananas with the background vocals, telling the guys, okay, we're going to do this melody, and just beautiful harmony. The actual Beatles isolated vocal is great. It's truly great. And the beauty is that one thing I always loved about the song, even as a little boy when I heard that, and the harmonies go, that, again, that F7 chord is so cool, that blues chord. Now, this is a very interesting phenomenon, because one thing I always say is that one of the earmarks, one of the strong earmarks of the blues is not just one dominant 7, but 4 dominant 7. In the key of C, that would be an F7. Now, Paul, also in the key of C, pulls the same trick and gets this beautiful melodic moment out of it from I'll Follow the Sun. We're in the key of C, but he starts on the 5-chord G. One day. Then he goes to F7. One day you'll look, you see right? You can't get that melody without the F7. He's purposely exploiting that flatted note in the 7th. So, that's the tritone of the F7.
Yep.
And it's so, this is a ballad. It doesn't sound like blues, you know. One day you know, whatever. I'm such a horrible singer. But, yeah.
Brilliant.
Yeah. It's, the Beatles have done that over and over again in unexpected moments where they'll decide to put a 7th chord in where it seems really inappropriate. But then you go, oh, it's the Beatles. It's great.
It works. All right, so let's address that aspect of it. Because as you say, I guess this chord progression was evocative to Paul of some sort of French melody. And I am not greatly acquainted with the French chanson trope.
Neither am I.
I'm thinking a guy in a beret playing an accordion with a monkey at his side. Is that what I'm thinking?
You know, I forget the guy's name, but there's a really famous French singer from the 50s who is touted as a remarkable singer even to this day. And sadly, I forget his name, but it could have been an influence for Paul.
I did see a cover of this on YouTube where the guy really played up the chanson kind of aspect with it and had a little accordion in the background and stuff.
Yeah.
And I get it. Like, when they put it in that context, it's really in your face, and it's like, I get it. But it didn't, I don't know, it doesn't sound as good as the Beatles, obviously. I think it's because of those elements, like the F7, when that comes in. Not the sharp 9, but the 7. Yeah, there is that bluesiness to it that, I don't know, puts something cool in there. Yeah.
I think when I was younger and I ventured to play this song, I didn't play the F7. I think I played the F minor. All right, yeah. Oh, we're not done talking by any means. I forgot about the diminished chord, so we got to do that. So, should I? All right, so what I'm going to do is screenshot the chart now, which is the lead sheet for the song. Now, what we're seeing is the verse. We see that F7 sharp 9 standing out like some guy on a street corner smoking a joint, selling drugs to people. So we have C, F7 sharp 9, B flat, and then we have this. Now what is all of that? All right. Now, we're going to talk about the magical diminished 7th chord. The demonstration I like to give is that if I have a G chord, a G bar chord, it's major shaped. And if I go up to, say, the 6th fret, I have a B flat chord, also major shaped. They're both majors, right? but they have a different set of notes. This has G, B, and D, and this has B flat, D, and F. All right, but when you do a diminished chord, diminished seventh chord, when you move it up a step and a half, you get the same four notes that was in the first one, and the same four notes, and the same four notes. I'll prove it if I can. So the notes we have here, let's see if we could remember these. F sharp, E flat, A, and C, right? F sharp, E flat, A, C. F sharp, E flat, A, C. So now we have A, F sharp, C, E flat. What I'll do is I'll do them in order. F sharp, E flat, A, C. F sharp, E flat, A, C. F sharp, E flat, A. Wait. Oh, I'm sorry. F sharp, E flat, A, C, and finally F sharp, F sharp, E flat, A, and C. That's a very bizarre thing, because if I did that with a major chord, I'd have three different sets of notes for each of those chords. All right, that's part of the magic of the diminished seventh. What it does is it splits the octave into quarters, equal quarters, right? If you were to look at a piano, you'd see how it literally, like mathematically, splits 12 notes into quarters, okay? Yeah. And the augmented chord also, by the way, does that, but in thirds.
Wait, since we're getting a bit guitar wonky here, that works no matter which strings you're on? Even the infamous G-B jump doesn't affect that pattern?
Well, I mean, I'm using the G and B strings when I do this.
That's what I'm noticing. But usually that creates a problem with regards to patterns, like if you were to do that on the bottom four strings rather than the top.
Sure. Yeah, I totally get what you're referring to. But since it's the same shape all the way through, it's always this minor third interval.
Right. Yeah, I get it.
And now, what is this chord? Now, one thing I always say, well, I'll do my famous, well, it's not famous, but I kind of wish it was, demonstration of, I'm going to do this diminished seventh chord. And for you musicians who know stuff, this is going to blow your mind. This is right now is by the way, a diminished chord. The reason I didn't write on the lead sheet F sharp diminished, A diminished, C diminished, A diminished, because it goes, I just stuck with F sharp diminished. Why is that? Because the chord literally has no root. So you can either say that it has no root or it has four roots. And you could call it by any one of those names, F sharp, A, C, and E flat, okay? So I just defaulted to F sharp because I was lazy. I'm not going to go F sharp diminished, A diminished, C diminished, when in fact they're all the same chord in any case.
Can I call it face flat?
Face flat?
F-A, oh, well, face, sure, yeah, almost, not quite.
Back flat.
Yeah.
Face flat. Yeah, you get the flat at the, yeah. Or face, the flat looks like a little B, so you could call it face B.
Yeah, okay, face him. Anyway, we'll work on it. We'll think of something.
All right, so now I'm going to give this little demo. So here's a diminished seventh chord. I'm going to kind of come up close. Now here's the rule. If you lower any one of the notes on this chord, you'll come up with a dominant seventh chord. So I'm going to lower this note by a half step. That's an E flat 7. I'll bring it back. Now I'm going to lower this note by a half step. A7. Going to bring it back. Going to lower this note by a half step. C7. Going to lower this note by a half step. F sharp 7. That's part of the magic of these chords.
Wow.
Yeah. It's mind-blowing. And you're just exploding all over the place tonight. So one thing you can infer from all this is there's a close relationship between a diminished seventh and a basic dominant seventh chord, right? So what is this doing? It resolves very nicely to that G chord. So let me build it over here now. I'm going to build it in this way. Now, if I remove this finger, I'm creating some dominant 7 because I'm lowering by a half step. Well, this is D7. So, so it's very close, but this has a little more spice. Because you get that. Whereas this is a much more conservative sound, right? But that's how it's functioning. All right, that is 5/7 of, oh God, see, this is tough to think about because are we in, I think of it, since we're in C minor, the 2 chord would be based on the D note, so I call this 2 dominant 7 to 5/7, all right, in C minor, or 5/7 of 5/7 in C minor. A nice sound in any minor key, when you use the 2 dominant 7, it's a really nice sound. I've certainly used it in some of my compositions. I love that sound. And it creates a hairball of a scale to play through when you're improvising. The best choice, like, just through using logic and what notes from the original scale can I use in this scale and what notes can I use, it almost necessitates a diminished scale, which is an 8-note scale, not a 7-note scale. So, all right, that's kind of a jazz.
Speaking of solos, then let's talk about the solo for this song.
Yeah, yeah. Harmonic minor sound.
Yeah.
But it's coming actually from a different place. It's kind of interesting. It's actually, he's using a melodic minor scale. Now, if I put all that together, I get. Now, if I start on an F note. Oh, wait. Yeah. He's doing F melodic minor? Yeah, he's doing F melodic minor. We're in the key of C minor, mind you. Right? So. All right, so. Yeah, now we're treating that F7 sharp 9 as if it's really a minor chord. And F minor, melodic minor. Now that is C melodic minor. It really softens, because if it was harmonic minor, it would be but that's not what's going on there, you know?
Yeah.
And George Martin, that's George Martin. He knew exactly what to do for this.
Evidently. And as you say, yeah, just that exact choice makes it very soft, makes it flow very beautifully like the song. But as you say, if you would make slightly different choices, it could be really jarring and sour.
Right, exactly. And by the way, let's talk about the actual tone quality of the guitar. He's got his tone all the way back. It sounds kind of fuzzy and dark and, not right. I remember when I first heard the song, I used to think it was a French horn that was playing that melody. And I can envision easily a French horn playing that melody. No problem. I think George Martin was thinking French horn. He thought, well, budget. We'll just have George do it with the volume turned down, with the tone turned down, you know. But yeah, so that little melody right there is a piece of work. Now, you know, one thing that always has bothered me is that the Beatles, especially John, they just had no respect for George Martin. They had respect in this, like in the early days, because he was the man. He was representative of a big institution, recording producer, blah, blah, blah.
He was the adult in the room. He was a whole 6 years older or whatever.
Right, exactly. Well, you know, those days. But he didn't earn their respect, and that's the thing that really saddens me, because little touches like this and all the recording engineering magic he pulled off, the miracle of Sgt. Pepper's, they should have been, wow, man, you rock. You're amazing. You made us become, you know, you realized, that's the word, you realized our sound, what we were trying to do artistically.
Yeah. Well, John was resentful, ultimately, of George, and he felt George and Paul were kind of short-selling him and messing with his songs, rather than... He thought that they were spending more time on Paul's stuff. But Paul collaborated more closely with George, so I think that's part of it. Yeah,
and Paul had the language, you know, he knew how to say, well, even the language of sound, like if you say, oh, I hear a melody like this, can you do that?
Yeah, whereas John would say, I want to smell the sawdust, or I want to sound like
right.
1,000 Buddhist monks or something. Yeah.
Right, I think he one time literally went to Martin and said, this had to be at the height of their psychedelic period, but he said to George Martin, I want this to sound like a tangerine, you know.
Was that Lucy in the Sky, or
maybe there's a tangerine in the lyrics?
Yeah, exactly.
Maybe, but...
Yeah, sounds about right. Well, and there's actually so much more to say about that. I told you recently about this documentary series about Paul McCartney that's making the rounds on YouTube right now. That same person has done a full documentary on John and Paul and their relationship, songwriting and otherwise. And I don't know. I'm only into the first. I've only watched the first part, but it's definitely interesting. And he's definitely going with the kind of implying that John was in love with Paul, kind of thing. How platonically or otherwise, I don't know. But anyway, his implication is that you can kind of tell at the point at which basically John started to feel spurned by Paul. Like when Paul was collaborating with George Martin on the Family Way film score while John was in Spain doing How I Won the War. And then he felt like they were kind of pushing him out or something, and that's the point at which it started to turn, and he started to move further away from the Beatles. And I don't know, it's a lot of psychoanalysis going on, but it does, some of the pieces seem to line up.
Yeah, that's fascinating. That's really fascinating. I don't think there was I may be wrong, but I'm pretty sure there wasn't a homosexual kind of love, but I think John would not be the person to admit having great respect for Paul, but I think he had tremendous respect for him, and he hated the fact that he did, you know?
Yeah. I think Paul is one of those kind of characters. It's almost like Mozart in Amadeus, where it's like,
right, exactly.
God, I wish this spoiled brat guy wasn't so damn talented.
Amazing.
Yeah.
But, you know, I mean, what a perfect amalgamation of chemistry and, you know, I mean, because
sorry, before I forget, I should note, in that documentary I'm referencing, I'll send you the link if you want to put it in the show notes. In that documentary I'm referencing, they also play, they play so many obscure, like, interviews you've never heard from 1964.
Oh, really?
Or whatever.
Oh, I gotta check this out.
Yeah, it's got a lot of source material. And they're playing an interview, it was from 66, maybe, 67, somewhere in there. And I think it was for BBC Radio or something. And the interviewer was interviewing John, and he was saying something about, like, you know, now you guys must feel so vindicated because, of course, there's always the kind of the haters at the beginning who think, oh, you're just a flash in the pan. But now you're producing this material, like, Yesterday and Michelle. You know, who ever thought you guys, you could come up with something so beautiful and romantic? And John, I guess that was at the point where they were still very much Lennon and McCartney and they weren't trying to separate their work. So he was just like, oh, I can be romantic. He wasn't, but you, like, you could almost hear John going, oh God, why is he only talking about Paul's songs?
Oh, speaking of the partnership and Michelle, there is reference to John's influence on the song, by the way. And this is really cool. Have you ever heard Nina Simone's I Put a Spell on You?
Yep.
Okay. Well, apparently that song was on the airwaves at that point in their history, and Lennon suggested to Paul, do something like the Nina Simone thing where she sings I love you, over and over again in that raw way. I don't think John wrote it, but I think Paul took a cue from that and wrote it in that style. But definitely you could hear that Nina Simone thing going on there.
I never put those pieces together, but yeah, interesting. Yeah,
kind of interesting. Also, what I love about, I don't know why I love this, but when we get to Revolver, next album, Paul, like in For No One and Eleanor Rigby, he's totally a cold observer. You know, he just tells the story, but without any connection. Like he's just reporting the story. It's almost cold. And you hear hints of that in Michelle, except when he gets to the I love you part. But the basic Michelle, ma belle, you could hear there's this kind of very
detachment. Yeah.
There's no emotional involvement there. You know?
Yeah, it's a good point. I think For No One, it's very, very specifically, like, that's a choice because it's someone who's trying to distance themselves from a relationship.
Oh, my God. Yeah, and the fact that it ends on the 5 chord is just brilliant choice. Brilliant choice.
It doesn't resolve. Yeah.
Sign of love behind the tears, crying for no one. Love that should have lasted years. That is perfect.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And also, to jump ahead to Revolver, John often said Here, There, and Everywhere was his favorite Paul song.
Yeah. Great song. I mean, there's a lot of, that's a good to break apart. There's a lot going on in that.
I'm putting my thinking cap on for Revolver because we could choose pretty much any song off of there.
Oh, my God. Well, Rubber Soul was hard enough.
Yeah,
I mean, God, there's so many songs, you know.
All right. Before we get too far off topic, anything else to say about Michelle? We shouldn't. Let's just note that this is a remarkably simple song. It is a verse and a bridge, and
it's so
you throw a solo in there. It's very, very simple, but it does not bore you. How long is it? What is the actual running time?
I don't know. It's got to be pretty short, though.
Yeah, under 3.
I'd have to check my files. Yeah, I would think so. Do I have my music files? No, I don't have my music files on this computer.
Well, the cover is under 3 minutes anyway.
Let me see. Rubber Soul.
Yep, 2:43. We're there.
2:43. That's long.
Yeah,
that's long. When you
for
look
just
at
a
Revolver.
Verse and a bridge, that is long. But it doesn't bore you.
No, and that's the Beatles, man. Revolver always blows my mind because everything's under 3 minutes. It's just I feel like I lived through an entire world in 2 minutes and 20 seconds or something like that, you know?
Actually, hold on. We're going to cut because I'm going to listen to something that we can't play on the video. So we'll cut here.
Okay.
Yeah. Oh. Okay, never mind. But I was thinking it brings in the kind of that other sound, the sound of the solo guitar at the end, which kind of adds something to the flavor of the song.
Oh, absolutely it does. Yeah, no question. And by the way, one other point about the production itself, there's not a lot to talk about, but the guitar tone is one, that it emulates the French horn. The second is that the acoustic guitar tracks, there are 2 acoustic guitars playing the same thing, but then when they do, not in the beginning, but later on in the song, there's a 3rd acoustic guitar that jumps in.
Right, okay, yeah. Why?
And they just want to highlight that moment. You know, they want to bring it out a little bit more. either that or they dialed up one of the guitars, but it really sounds to me like a third guitar.
Yeah.
Which is all possible. I mean, they all played guitar, so it's...
Why not?
Why not? Why not? And, the background vocals, needless to say, they're exquisite. And like I say, Shades of Abbey Road, 6-part harmony. That's that, and they nailed it.
It's mathematically impossible.
I do wonder, talk about conspiracy theories and stuff like that, Maybe they had a 4-track machine by then and they didn't tell anybody, because how do you get like a 6-part vocal and 3 guitars and drums and bass and lead vocal?
Wait, wasn't Rubber Soul 4-track?
Was it 4-track? I thought they didn't have 4-track. I thought Sgt. Pepper was the first 4-track. I may be wrong.
Oh, you might be right. Because I was thinking Sgt. Pepper's 8, but no, they bounced down to 4. Yeah.
They might have, they might have used 2 recording machines at times, and then
they must have done something, because as you say, you could not fit that onto anything less than 4 tracks and do it any sort of justice.
Yep.
Interesting. Well, was Jeff Emmerich working with them by this point, or did he not get on till Sgt. Pepper or Revolver?
Oh no, he got on Revolver. Which is amazing when you think about it, because there's a total change in their sound by Revolver. Yeah. Rubber Soul stands in between the old and the new somehow, you know?
Yeah. It's definitely a transition point in their career.
Yeah.
So can you speak to the way that this song in particular was received? Because that was one thing that I picked up from that documentary I was watching, was that clearly Michelle was a standout song. And it won some sort of songwriting award in 1966 or something. It was like... Yeah. It was on the charts and everything.
This is interesting. In NME, Alan Evans described Michelle as a memorable track with a bluesy French sound. That's perfect, because that's exactly what's going on. Supported by the others using voices as instruments. I read somewhere that some reviewer said it was... All right, one reviewer, Steve Race, admitted to being astonished by the album. When I heard Michelle, I couldn't believe my ears. The second chord is an A chord, wrong. While the note in the melody is, I see what he's saying. He meant the second chord has an A major third, and the melody is an A flat. This is an unforgivable clash, something no one brought up knowing older music could ever have done. It's entirely unique, a stroke of genius. I suppose it was sheer musical ignorance that allowed Paul and John to do it, but it took incredible daring. Yeah. They won some award for this.
But from your experience, you remember it being on the radio when you were growing up?
No, I don't specifically remember hearing Michelle on the radio, but it did apparently got a lot of airplay from what they're saying here on Wikipedia. One critic didn't like it. He said Rubber Soul was the best of all the band's LPs, and that, quote, every cut was an inspiration, something new and remarkable in and of itself, except Michelle, although he had it. To be fair, it paid the bills for years to come.
What an interesting take, but okay. I would say if there's one song that I will skip over on Rubber Soul, it would be What Goes On. But
absolutely, yeah. Like, why even?
Well, you got to give Ringo his time in the sun, but
I guess Ringo was sort of comic relief for the band in a way.
Yeah, clearly. Oh well, but no, absolute brilliant masterpiece album. Before we leave Michelle, one other thing that I don't think we even brought up, but you brought up Chet Atkins. What's his relation to this song?
Oh yeah. I have to scroll up for this. I don't have my mouse for this computer, so I'm using the arrow key. Michelle won the Grammy Award for the Song of the Year in 1967.
I can read a quote from Paul from Many Years From Now by Barry Miles. Michelle was a tune I'd written in Chet Atkins' finger-pickin' style. There is a song he did called Trombone with a repetitive top line, and he played a bass line whilst playing a melody. This was an innovation for us, even though classical guitarists had played it, no rock and roll guitarists had. Based on Atkins' trombone, I wanted to write something with a melody and a bass line on it, so I did. I just had it as an instrumental in C.
Yes, indeed. And I looked up trombone and I listened to it. It sounds nothing like Michelle. It's just that it's got finger picking.
Yeah, can you demonstrate the Chet Atkins? What is...
I don't know the song. I listened to it once. I don't really know it on guitar. But I will say this about Chet. He was a truly great guitarist. He was a great guitarist. And people like Mark Knopfler from Dire Straits worship his playing, you know. He deserves a lot more recognition than he got. He was truly great. And in fact, in my set, I do the song Mr. Sandman because I heard Chet do it and I was blown away by it. It was just so good.
Can you demonstrate a little bit?
Chet. I don't do the finger picking.
Oh, okay. I thought you were going to show us some finger picking. Oh, okay.
No, I wish. No, I tried to learn it. It's a hard technique. It's like you gotta. So you got to keep this going no matter what the chord, right?
Yeah.
But then with these fingers, you start playing the melody.
Yeah.
Da, 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 da,
Yeah.
I can't.
I remember you praising it in one of our lessons once, so I went to look it up and watched him do it, and it's just next level.
It's wonderful.
Yeah,
it's really wonderful.
Yeah. But maybe a lost art. But in just satisfy my technical curiosity, in the actual performance on Rubber Soul, he's not finger picking that. That's a pick and a finger thing going on, or how's he physically doing that?
Oh, that's a good question. I mean, you could play it all with a pick. You know, I don't know where that's coming in. I don't have my capo on, but. Yeah, you could do that. I don't know if you could see me here. But you could just as easily use a pick. So,
you could do both.
Yes, yeah.
Wow, that's very beautiful. Yeah.
Pickety third, dude.
Yeah. I don't think he's doing the finger picking style on the recording.
And by the way, some of my favorite guitar players, for some reason, I am staunchly stuck to the pick. I won't play lead guitar without a pick. I just won't. And my favorite guitar players are the guys that play without picks. That would include Robin Ford. Larry Colton sometimes doesn't use a pick. Mark Knopfler. All my favorite guys don't use picks. And here I am with the damn pick, wondering why I don't get the acclaim those guys. I just got to lose the pick.
There you go. And open up whole vistas. All right. Well, we've done this 3-hour conversation in 1 hour. I think we should be given a big pat on the back for this. This is an achievement.
Right.
All right. Anything else whatsoever to add about Michelle?
No. I think okay. We've done a pretty decent job. I think I covered all the points. I never wrote down notes for this. I just wrote down the chord progression.
Didn't have any notes on the lyrics other than I love you, I love you, I love you.
Oh, that's one thing I'll say about the lyrics. I do like the idea behind it. It's a really cool idea that I'm in love with this woman, but I can't speak her language. How am I going to let her know? That's great, you know?
Yeah. And so he speaks the international language of love, music.
There we go.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, it's very simple, but very effective. Good job. Good job, Paul.
Yep.
You get my thumbs up. And now he can breathe easy.
And just to sign off, if any of you don't know, you should know who James Corbett is, but if you don't know who he is, please go visit CorbettReport.com. Is it with a the or just Corbett Report? I forget.
Either way.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I got them both.
CorbettReport.com.
Yeah. And if anyone out there doesn't know Vinny's guitar lessons, if you are at all interested in music theory and or guitars, and or I suppose anything, composing, whatever, hit him up. He does lessons, and I can personally attest he's very, very, very good at them. So please do it.
And patient, right? I'm patient. That's a big one.
Remarkably
right?
So. I sometimes try, I try not to think what it's like from your perspective as you're watching me fumble around, but anyway.
And actually, as a side note, I'm just going to put this out there. My website is embarrassingly old. It's from 2005. Built all in Macromedia Flash, which I knew at the time. But I know nothing about building a website. I can't even do it on Wix or whatever. I'm just like, I don't have the time or patience either. So if anybody would like to trade building a website for me, I will trade for guitar lessons hour per hour. Whatever hours you put in, I'll give you back in guitar lessons. So just a thought.
Awesome. All right, so everyone put your thinking caps on. We're going to tackle Revolver next time, and who knows which song we're going to pick. It's a coin toss.
I wish we could do all of them.
I know.
Man.
Well, we will, because we'll go through the cycle many times, right?
Right.
There you go. Okay, well, anyway, thank you, Vinny. I very much appreciate your insights.
James. And I appreciate your being here for this, and yeah, I think it's a good partnership. So let's do it again.
We're the John and Paul of podcasting.